I open my eyes and everything's a blur. I'm surrounded by people holding me down in my own bed. My vision is gone and my strength is weak. I'm soaking wet from sweat. I'm trying to fight these invaders, but I can't see who they are. I don't understand why they're restraining me. They call me by name and tell me to relax. I'm tiring very fast and fighting extremely hard. I suddenly hear my wife telling me everything will be okay. I start to visually focus on an emblem on one of my attacker's shirts. I see a very blurry snake climbing up a pole. I suddenly realize that I was not being attacked. These guys were paramedics trying to help me. You see, my sugar levels bottomed out, and I was heading into a diabetic coma. This is one of the many realities of living with diabetes. It is a game of survival that most people never quite understand. Most people believe that proper diet, exercise, and medication control are the key to diabetic survival. This is true, but it's not that simple. There are many other human characteristics that come into play. Diabetes controls every aspect of an individual's life. I've been insulin dependent for over 14 years, and like many other diabetics, some of the biggest obstacles we face are medication and treatment costs, and diet and exercise. These two things here, this syringe and this insulin, is what keeps us diabetics alive. Without these every day in our life, we would die. It's a pretty scary thought that something so simple is going to control if somebody lives or dies. According to the Center for Disease Control, there's 26 million of us in the United States that need those every day. That's 8% of our population living with diabetes. According to the New York Times, an article written by Tara Parker, diabetes treatment costs a family last year over $6,000 on average for medical treatment. Now, depending on your household income, this may come as a slight financial burden, or like in my family's case, an almost crippling blow to day-to-day expenses. I mean, test strips, insulin, syringes, glucose tabs, foot creams, doctor visits, specialist visits, eye care. It all adds up, and the list goes on and on and on. Some of us literally cannot afford to live. Faced with these problems and minimal cash, the government refuses to help, doctors refuse to see you, and pharmacists refuse to dispense medications without prescriptions. It is terrible to think that in order to live that you actually do need money. If you do not have money to buy the drug that keeps you alive, then you will die. And from a business aspect, most people don't care. Now you can go to like a hospital, and they will shoot you up with insulin when your sugar is extremely high, and then cut you loose. But then you have to return when your sugar becomes high again in a couple hours, and we all know how expensive those emergency room visits are. Some hospitals can even refuse treatment if you don't have insurance. These types of problems do not usually come to mind when we hear the struggle of diabetes. Most people generally think that if you eat right, take your medications, that you'll be fine. This leads us to the next diabetic issue that I wanted to cover, which is diet and exercise. Now, people say, "Oh, you have to eat better to control your diabetes." I hear that all the time. And so with that being said, how many of you eat healthy every day? Probably nobody, huh? How many of you know exactly how many carbohydrates are in a serving of food? No? That's something else that a diabetic has to count in order to maintain a proper healthy diet. Many of us don't even know what a proper serving size even looks like. Education is the key. The fact is, learning to eat right just doesn't happen overnight. There are many websites out there to help, and here's a couple of them. That is www.diabetes.org, www.diabetes.web.com/guide/sample meal plans. Now these are great tools, but the best option would be to seek a consultation from a dietitian. Now the same goes for exercise. You should always consult a doctor before beginning an exercise program, but it's essential to controlling your weight. The foods that you eat causes weight gain, insulin causes weight gain, and the medications such as blood pressure pills, cholesterol medicine, those also cause weight gain, which are complications due from diabetes. Exercising does lower your blood sugar and can create low blood sugar levels if the proper amount of glucose level is not maintained in your system. Staying motivated with an exercise, eating healthy, and having the cash to control our disease are in fact the biggest obstacles with leading a healthy life. After listening to me speak tonight, I hope that everyone will be more aware of some of the in-depth struggles that diabetics face. In a perfect world, eating healthy, exercising, taking your medication properly, and visiting your doctor on a regular level would greatly decrease the odds of developing kidney disease, heart disease, blindness, and amputations. But if this was a perfect world, there wouldn't be any diabetics.